Let's do some homework. Number 1, if f of x equals negative 16x squared plus 100, what is f of 2? So we are going to input the number 2 into the x spot right there. So that negative 16 is sort of by itself. We're going to put 2 squared in parentheses like that, and then plus 100. You could just grab a calculator there and go ahead and calculate that, but negative 16 times 4 is what we're working with there in front. Negative 16 times 4 is negative 64. And then if we add the 100 on, we get essentially 100 minus 64, which is 36. And we're done. Number 2, we have a function and we have another input, negative 4, but this time notice we have 2 inputs spots. There's 2 x's, one right there and one right there. This is a factored form of a quadratic equation. So here we go. Negative 4 plus 6, and multiply that times negative 4 minus 3. Again, you can go straight to your calculator from there, but if you're going to do it by hand, just make sure you do each set of parentheses by themselves first. So negative 4 plus 6 is positive 2, and that's going to multiply the other answer, whatever we get, which is negative 4 minus 3, which is a negative 7. And so 2 times negative 7 is negative 14, and we're done there. Alright, so I saw a taxi over the weekend and thought that I would present you with this problem. It's a pretty complicated taxi. Calculate the fare if a passenger traveling after 8 p.m. goes a total of 3 miles and spends 5 minutes stopped in traffic. So as we look through here, we see we have $2.50 as an initial charge. In other words, I'm going to interpret that as soon as you get in the cab, they automatically charge you $2.50, so it goes up from there. So our fare, which is what they charge you, is definitely going to have a $2.50, and then we're going to have to do some other things. So this says we are traveling after 8 p.m. Well, that's relevant because if you look down here, they have extra charges depending on the time. So normal, morning they don't really care, but at nighttime between 8 and 6 they're charging an extra 50 cents that they call a surcharge. So I guess they're paying the drivers more after dark, so we're going to have to add on another 50 cents. And let's see, now the rest. We go 3 miles. Well, it's 40 cents per 1/5 of a mile. 40 cents for 1/5 of a mile. So if I go 3 miles, how many 1/5 miles is that? Well, if you think, basically there's 5 1/5s in a mile, and we have 3 miles, so that means we're going to go 15 fifths. So I'm going to have to also charge 40 cents times, like I said, 3 miles would really be 15 1/5 miles. So, and what else do we have? Oh yeah, spending 5 minutes stopped in traffic. They charge us for that too, and that's 40 cents per minute, it says. So they're going to get their money, even if they're not going anywhere. 40 cents, and this is just per minute, so I get to multiply that times 5. So now I just need to add all that up. The hardest parts being these. So let's see, 40 cents times 15. Do this the old-fashioned way here. Okay, so that is $6. 40 cents times 15 is $6. $2.50 and 50 cents, I guess, makes $3. And 40 times 5, I know 4 times 5 is 20, so it's trying to tell me that's $2. So our taxi ride is a total of $11. Taxis are complicated. Moving on. Number 4, identify the roots and the 0 of each parabola. Just to remind you, the roots and zeros is another word for x-intercepts. So that is this spot and this spot. Now you can kind of show your answer in a couple different ways. First of all, the coordinates of those points. Let's see, this one on the left is count over 5. So that is the point -5, 0. Some people would just go ahead and say x equals -5, because the 0 part is why we call them zeros. It's always going to be there. So it doesn't really tell you a whole lot. And this one on the right is 2, 0. Or in other words, the root of 0 is the number 2. Over here, we have 1, 2 spots there. Those are the coordinates -3, 0. Or in other words, x equals -3. Then you can kind of have to pay attention to the instructions of whatever you're doing to know how you should present your answer to those questions. X equals +3. In fact, some people would go ahead and notice that one, since it's the same number, 3, only positive and negative. Sometimes people will be fancy and they'll say x equals ±3. Moving on. Number 5 and 6, we are supposed to find the vertex using -b/2a. So remember, this is a, the number multiplying x squared. The b number is in the middle, and the c number is at the end, but the formula is not too concerned about that. So opposite of b/2a, so that would be -14 divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. And that doesn't divide very well. I didn't do a very good job of that. -14 divided by 4. That came out as a decimal. That's okay. -3.5. Needed to happen sooner or later. Okay, so that tells me that my answer to this problem is -3.5, comma something. I still need the y value. So now you're going to try a calculator or whatever, and you're going to need to calculate this. 2 times, what I'm doing is I'm plugging that back into those 2 spots there. -3.5 squared plus 14 times -3.5, and then I'm going to minus 4. And you just need to type that into a calculator. And that comes out to be -28.5. Again, don't freak out about the decimals, it just happens. Number 6, same techniques. Opposite of b, well, first of all, the a number is 1, the b number is -10, and the c number is 5. So opposite of b would be +10 now, divided by 2 times the a, which is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2. So I get 5. So the answer is 5 something. So now we need to plug 5 into the original function. And I believe, let's see, that's 25, 50, and 5. -20. And we're done there. Number 7 and 8, just kind of wanted you to practice an old skill. This time we are adding, basically you're just doing like terms. That'd probably be the best way I can say it. So you can see that 4x squared and 2x squared are similar because their exponents are the same. They both have a power of 2. So we just add those together. Well, I should say we add those terms together. 4x squared and 2x squared is 6x squared. Notice that I did not mess with the exponents. It's not like it became a little 4 as an exponent. Just, it's like 4 apples and 2 apples. So now I'm going to do the -9x with the middle term over here plus 4x. So -9 plus 4. -9 plus 4 is -5, so I'm going to put -5x. And finally, there's a 5 at the end and a 7 at the end. And those are going to go together to make a 12. And that's my final answer. Number 8 is subtracting in the middle. So again, notice the difference between this is plus and that's minus. That makes these problems quite a bit different. One way you can basically take that into consideration is right away, this really means minus 3x squared, but also minus 6x. Notice it was plus 6x, and now plus 5. Now what I'm doing there to do that is I'm basically distributing -1 times each one of those. -1 times 3, -1 times 6, -1 times -5, and that's what turned it into a plus 5. So essentially everything in here is now opposite. That's kind of what that minus sign is doing. And now it just becomes essentially the same as problem 7. We're just adding like terms together, like that. That's one way to think about it. So now looking at these first terms, 5x squared plus -3x squared would be 2x squared. The middle term, 4x minus 6x, 4x plus -6x would be -2x. And finally, -10 plus +5 would be -5. And I think that's my final answer. Now, I usually don't like to show this step right here. I don't really personally need to do that. I just look at this and go, 5 minus 3x squared was 2x squared. And then the middle part, 4 minus 6. 4 minus 6 is -2. And finally, this is where it gets trickier for people, -10 minus -5. If you have a calculator, if necessary, -10 minus -5, the calculator is going to say the answer to that's -5. So that's what I do. I usually don't do this in between step, but I guess in my mind it's what I'm doing. All right, done.